Hello, and welcome to episode 74 of My Dog Will Eat My Face. And on this date, actually as of December 17th, I wish to reach out to all my listeners, friends, and family alike a Yo Saturnalia. For those of you out there who have no clue what the heck I'm talking about, what does Yo Saturnalia mean? Well, the Saturnalia was the greatest of the Roman holidays, one could say. It was full of all the trappings you might find in a modern Christmas movie today. You would put a fir tree in your home. You would trade gifts with each other all 7 days of the Saturnalia. It would be a time of merriment, joy, games, giving to the less fortunate, even switching roles with people of lesser economic status. It was truly a very popular holiday, as you might well imagine. And there's a reason why it actually sounds so much like our modern day Christmas. Now, I know I got lots of Christians in the listenership right now, so please don't take any offense to this. This podcast is merely having some fun. Don't make a big deal of it. But I do want to connect the dot between Saturnalia and the modern Christian Christmas and explain really the origin of Christmas, what it really means, and unfortunately for maybe some people, has absolutely nothing to do with Christ or the Christian religion even whatsoever. So, if you've got a thick skin and are unscathed by that statement, I implore you to continue your listening, and I'll share with you the beginnings of, well, Christmas. But in this case, I'm going to call it by its original name, the Saturnalia. Now, as many of you could well guess, the Saturnalia was a celebration of the Roman god Saturn, who was chief among all the gods, so to speak. It, as I've already stated, began on December 17th, centered around the winter solstice on the 21st of December. But the holiday itself did last for 7 days. And as a lot of you may know, back in golly, as recently as the 19th century, there were 7 days of Christmas that were celebrated. Remember the old carol, "On the seventh day of Christmas, my true love gave to me"? Well, that's where that comes from. There were 7 days of the celebration of the god Saturn, who again was chief amongst all the gods. So it was a very important Roman holiday, needless to say, from a religious standpoint. But it really made its mark with its popularity in world history. In this time of year, as I said, people would switch roles with people of different economic statuses. That would even include slaves. It was not uncommon for a patrician family to completely switch roles with their household slaves, to where the slaves could now boss around the patrician family and the owners, and the slaves are the masters of the home for the 7 days of the Saturnalia. And it was all done in good jest and fun. I don't think there was any cases of a slave going out of his way and killing his owner or something like that, because I don't think that would make it very popular for so long if people started dying. But I think at the time people really took it with a sense of jest. Also, there was an extensive amount of gift giving around this time. People would give each other presents, people who they cared for and they loved, their family, their friends, and they would do it throughout the 7 days of the Saturnalia. Of course, games were to be had, public spectacles in the arenas and the circuses, of course, but also just in the common drinking establishments and in a common home. Throughout the empire, gambling and dice playing was usually frowned upon, if not fully illegal. But during the Saturnalia, gambling was perfectly legal. That's one thing that didn't carry over to modern Christmas. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'll leave that judgment up to you. But gamblers were free to just gamble away, and there were no consequences from the state if they were caught doing that. And in fact, if you even look at the colors of our modern Christmas, that is red and green, you'll see that it has origins to the Saturnalia as well. Red is the well-known color representing the god Saturn. And his temples, the temples to Saturn, would often be painted in red. And let me do a quick segue here. I know a lot of people picture ancient Rome as this gleaming marble capital, because what we have remaining today is mainly just the marble ruins of what once was. But actually, those temples, those palaces, those public buildings were actually very colorful. The statuary, the arches, they painted them. They were not just a gleaming marble. Marble was chosen because of its durability. But it wasn't a city of just gleaming white marble throughout it. It was very colorful. And so the temples of Saturn were no exception, and that's why they were painted red, especially on the columns. And during the Saturnalia, they would decorate the temples of Saturn with green garlands around the columns. And that's where you get the color green in Christmas, because it originated as one of the main colors of the Saturnalia, red and green. If you ever wondered why the heck Christmas colors are red and green, now you know. It all comes from the Roman world and reverence of the Roman god Saturn. Now, you probably noticed here too that it lasted for 7 days ending on New Year's Eve. But then you might say, hey, so therefore it has nothing to do with Christmas, because that happened on December 25th. And that is kind of true. The celebration of Christmas was not always as it is now, a single day, as I already said. It was multiple days. And the highlight of it primarily was Christmas Eve, honestly, not Christmas Day. So the holiday itself has evolved even under the Christian faith over time. But the original adaptation was certainly a perfect reflection of the 7 days of the Saturnalia, with the climax being on the 24th. And it's all centered around of course, the winter solstice, which is generally December 21st, because that is the shortest day of the year, and so it's a celebration of the darkest, shortest day, and turning the corner to where the days begin to get longer and life begins to more or less return to the earth from that cold and bleak winter. But we can't leave the current Christmas Day out of this story because that's actually part of ancient origin as well, much more ancient than the Christian faith. It's technically not part of the Saturnalia, but obviously this was an event that was purposefully back to back with the Saturnalia and was really sort of the absolute climax of that Roman holiday. So we get to December 25th. Now we call it Christmas Day. As I've just stated, it technically is not part of the Saturnalia itself, but it is obviously back to back to it. And it was done that way on purpose. Because in the Roman world, there was another very popular cult, which actually originated from the Eastern world, probably from Parthia. Now, I'm not that well versed in Near Eastern religions as I would like to be. So forgive me if I'm a little dark on that topic, at least more so than I am on Roman or Greek deities. But the day after the Saturnalia was marked as the birth of the sun god. And in this case, it was a particular sun god named Mithra. And Mithraism was another very popular, as I said, cult in the Roman Empire that originated nowhere in Greece or Italy or anywhere from the West at all. It mainly came from the Near East, probably Parthia. I'm not 100% sure on the origins of Mithraism, so you'll have to forgive me. But I do know the Romans really caught on to that particular cult as well. And when I say cult, I'm not using that as a disparaging term. It's just a term used to describe which deity a number of people are worshiping. That's all what I'm trying to describe here. It's in no way meant as a derogatory term. Today we use it as a derogatory term, but I think that's foolish. And anyway, I digress. But Mithraism was adopted by the Romans, who were very good at adopting new religions and had a history of extreme religious tolerance, relatively speaking, of places they once conquered. If they moved into any new area of the world, they would oftentimes tell the local people they may, of course, keep their gods, they can worship them, so long as they can also allow their Roman immigrants to worship their gods. And above all, they accept the emperor as a god in flesh. They have to also worship the Roman emperor as a god. If you do that, then by all means you can keep all your other gods. The Romans didn't care. Back then, that was a very religious, tolerant society for that time in human history. And so that's how Mithraism caught on. It was very well tolerated, and it became very popular in the Roman world. because that celebration of the birth of a sun god is the celebration of the rebirth of the sun as the days get longer and the bleak, cold, dark winter is now behind us. And of course, we all know, after the 21st, after the solstice, the days do get longer. The temperatures worldwide tend to, or not worldwide, what am I saying? Northern hemisphere temperatures tend to increase over time. And we move into spring and then summer, so we all know this today very well. And this was a celebration of the sun re-emerging triumphant and being born again, so that their crops can again yield food and they can again wage war and in the war months and all the other things that they like to do outside when it's not miserable and cold and dark. So the 25th was the celebration of the rebirth of the sun god, Mithra. And that was just that one day. And so basically what you had in the full package of the Roman world, the 7 days of the Saturnalia, ending with the rebirth of the sun god. And then that'd be kind of the mellow out then of the Saturnalia. It would be time to move on. Of course, they'd celebrate other events, other gods, other things for the rest of the year, but this was by far the religious hiatus of the Roman world. And it was very, very popular. And you can imagine why Saturnalia was so popular. There was gift giving. There was trading in roles. Slaves got to be masters. Masters became slaves. People were allowed to play dice games and gamble. There were public games, private parties, food given to all the poor people, and riches even extended to some of the very poorest of people. There's a feeling of gift giving, of joy, of love, of merriment, of celebration. All those things that we hold dearly today with our holidays. I don't know if many people among us today would give up Christmas forever. If you polled the American population today, I bet a lot of them would say, no way, we're not going to give up Christmas. Well, the Romans felt the same way about the Saturnalia. So you might ask, and also the same way about Mithraism. So you might ask, why then did the Roman Empire abandon the Saturnalia and Mithraism if it was so popular? Well, in this next segment, I'll tell you exactly why. Well, as I'm sure most of my listeners know, or anyone who's aware of world history would know, that it was in the 3rd century under Constantine that Christianity actually became the state religion of the Roman Empire. So Christianity just emerged as a strange Jewish cult to the Romans that wasn't very popular. And fast forward about 200 years, it's the official state religion. So, how did that happen? Well, we all know, a lot of people know, I shouldn't say we all know, the story of Constantine, the Emperor Constantine, and why he converted to Christianity and therefore decided to make Christianity the official Roman religion. But it was hard pressed to get these Romans throughout the Roman world to convert to Christianity. They had their ways said about them, and they were not going to give up things like the Saturnalia and the rebirth of the sun god, because, frankly, they just were too darn popular. They were too much fun. So, in the early church, they just basically decided to repackage the Saturnalia and the birth of the sun god as Christmas. So basically all the church had to do was to roll into town and say, hey, Romans, we're not here to take away the Saturnalia or stop you from celebrating the birth of the sun god. We're just here to clarify that celebration of 7 days is actually a celebration of Christ, who is the sun god, born and reborn on the 25th of December. And that's why the church chose December 25th as the day Jesus was born, because it borrowed it directly from Mithraism, an Eastern religion, from probably, again, Parthia or Persia maybe, but those of you who don't know geography very well, it came from, the areas of Iraq and Iran, more or less. So that's what the church did. They basically repackaged these holidays, changed some of the names around, and said you could keep the holiday, down to the gift giving, the joy, the merriment, the giving to the poor, all these things that made it so popular. Even putting a fir tree in your home, which was a Roman custom during the Saturnalia. So you could still do that too. But you have to understand that that's Christmas. That's the celebration prefacing the birth of our God, Jesus Christ, on the 25th, the sun god. So you just had the wrong name. It's not Mithra. It's really Jesus Christ that you should be celebrating. And you have been celebrating. You just got the name wrong. It's okay. You can still do all those things. Just from now on, get the names right. And for the most part, the Romans looked at each other and said, oh, okay. If it's just changing the name, sure. I'll keep it. And I'll call it whatever you want me to call it. And therefore, the common folk got to keep all their customs and their religion, so to speak, at least their practices. And the church got a whole bunch of new converts into Christianity by wrapping it around the most popular Roman holidays. And selling it under a different name. That's how they did it. And that's how we proceed into this modern era today and celebrate and have Christmas. It's how we even have the Christmas season. And as I already said, the colors of Christmas are directly imported from the colors for Saturn. So next time you see red and green Christmas lights, think, oh, look at those pretty Christmas colors. Just do me a little favor. Think back in a little back of your head. I secretly know that those are actually colors representing the Roman god Saturn. It has nothing to do with the Christian God or Christmas. the temples of Saturn were painted red, and the green represented the garlands that they would decorate the columns with during the festivities. So that's why today, 2,000 years later, I say, Yo Saturnalia to all my friends and listeners. It's just another way of saying happy holidays. So as I wrap today's podcast with red paper and a green bow representing the god Saturn, of course, I hope that some of you can secretly chuckle in the back of your mind when someone says, hey, let's put Jesus back in Christmas, when what they should be saying is, hey, let's put Mithra back in Christmas. In all seriousness, though, I hope folks take this podcast in jest. Nothing that I'm saying here is meant to disparage anyone's personal beliefs. Whatever you believe, I hope works for you, and I certainly hope it works for others. And I'd be a complete moron if I did not credit Christianity with a lot of good things it has given to civilization over the years. But I do want to keep the Saturnalia. The Saturnalia. I'll just say that. Actually, in point of fact, before I close, this is precisely why there were some major schisms within the Christian church later on. There were Christian leaders who were very much against the idea of celebrating Christmas because they knew it was of pagan origin. This is true. This was a major cause of problems in the Christian church when it was trying to wrestle with itself and define who it was. And so, this is actually nothing really new. But I think it's something that's been pretty well forgotten amongst us people in the modern world. So, whatever you're doing this December, the Saturnalia, Christmas, Mithraism, Islam, I don't care. I hope you have a very happy holiday. And for those of you that think like me, I hope you have a fantastic Saturnalia. Now, if you made it this far, my friends, through this podcast, you deserve probably a medal. But I deeply do thank you for your listenership. I sincerely mean that. Please remember to follow the podcast and turn on notifications when you're alerted to. So you can be alerted to future notifications. I'm sorry, I almost misspoke. But if you really want to support the podcast, go to patreon.com/mydogwilleatmyface. And with that, I'm just going to say it one last time of this year, Yo Saturnalia. And I'll be in touch again later.